Hello, everybody. It's Audie Cashin. I have the pleasure of introducing Bella Rose today, and this is going to be exciting because she's going to talk about how to delight in your marriage. And most of the times, as men and as women, we are wired differently, and Bella and I had the chance to be able to talk about that. And so it's really how to, instead of me or my wife talking to me in Chinese and me trying to talk to her in English and us not being able to come together, it's like, how do we actually have that conversation around intimacy in our marriage? So I think this is great. Bella, talk to us. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're passionate about.
Yeah, Audie, I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm so excited for the listeners. This is just fantastic. So I've done this work for quite a while, and it's really a work for women to understand men and ultimately be able to have the grace to transform their husbands by God's grace and transform their marriages. Because I think a lot of the time it's just a lot of times it's not being empowered with the right information. I work with women, generally women of faith, who just haven't known how to, what to do, what a husband and wife really need in order to connect and really be able to grow their marriage. What it ends up being is that a husband doesn't feel fulfilled, and so he feels hurt and in pain. She doesn't feel fulfilled because she feels, in response, she doesn't feel loved, and so she doesn't even know what to do. And there's so much shame and there's so much silence around sexual intimacy that she doesn't even know what to do, even if she did feel fulfilled. So my work and my passion is to help women to understand, one, their husband's heart, and ultimately, how their body works so that she feels confident and competent. And then really to get to a place where people, husbands and wives, get to the truth that sex should be better in marriage, that sex should be and is better in marriage. And so that's truly my heart on the matter.
Wow, that's a huge, huge thing that you said, and something that I know that Lily and I, my wife is a relationship coach, and we have conversations about this very openly. Yeah, she worked for Dr. Henry Cloud. I don't know if you know him.
Oh, I love him, of course.
Yeah. So her passion is helping women that are not married to find that right one.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. She's on a coaching call right now. I was thinking, can I text Lily to get her on this? She would love to be able to talk this conversation.
Oh, wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah. But so, you just unpacked a huge amount of things there, because I was thinking in the back of my mind as you were talking about that. And hey, everybody, I want to apologize. I am not dressed up for this interview with Bella because I had a flat tire. So we're talking about having a flat tire in your marriage. So this is God just decided this is going to be apropos. So I am in my gear for riding instead of interviewing. You guys can handle that.
Love it.
But what I was going to say is, so you don't have a flat tire in your marriage. I think about, I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old and girls, and I'm telling them, body parts and touching things and all that kind of stuff, and shame. I'm trying not to shame, but I'm just saying we don't do that. Here we do that in private. And so I think about all these no's, and then finally you get married, and then it's like, yes, now enjoy it. And it's like, wait a second, how do I switch gears that fast and know what like you said, how do I get in touch with my body, what I love as a woman? I'm thinking as a woman, how would you do that whenever a man is our whole world is kind of sexual, So, talk to me more about that. Like, how do you really get there to be able to have the two coming together as one, and not having this disconnect or this frustration or feeling like they're being used or, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I can tell that you and your wife have a lot of great conversations, because you've got a lot of really good understandings already that I don't always happen upon with the husbands that either email me or that kind of thing. So that's fantastic. But yeah, what I think is really helpful to understand is for the most part, men and women, if they haven't been taught well from a very young age about sex and the holiness and the goodness and the power of sex, and the right framework, for the most part, they have been taught through media, through movies, through pornography, and a lot of it started out really out as honestly benign curiosity, and because they didn't know where else to turn. And so and that's a lot of women I work with. That was my past. I had zero understanding. And then when I was doing my homework and accidentally happened upon pornography, it was like, oh my gosh, this is going to give me clarity on what sex is like. A lot of men are even given, pornography by their fathers, and that's their education on what a woman wants. And not funny, but it's sad, I guess ironic or opposite is what a woman wants. It's the opposite of what pornography portrays, because what is really interesting, and what I think is really important for husbands and wives to understand, is that what the kind of the framework that I proliferate and teach is that what we are witnessing in our society, whether it's through pornography, and just so you know, pornography, for everyone who doesn't think it's so pervasive, it's 1 in 5 searches on Google is for pornography. Like, it is that big of a deal. Yeah. So, every man that is feeling shame of that, like, I want to say, like, yes, that is painful, and just about everyone has been exposed to it. And for women that are broken because of their husband's addictions or because of his past, like, I also want to just normalize it for you and say, you know what? Yeah, it's happened to most husbands. And that is also just a clue, like, on how important sex is to your man. It is that important, but intrinsically he has shame about it. If that is something he either has engaged in or does engage in, it's extremely shameful, no matter what his faith is, because he knows there's just an aspect to that. But to kind of just move into our society in every aspect of where we're seeing sex portrayed, I believe, is truly being portrayed is male sex, is what I call it, masculine sex, because men are the ones proliferating it. Whether it's pornography, like, men are the ones that are proliferating that pornography, and traditionally, that is what's, again, being proliferated from them. But then also the unredeemed male mind, right? And then also our media, that's also being put forth by men, and it's not because men are evil, but it's because they have originally been the leadership that's created these giant media companies. And if you look at the very tippy top of these media companies, because media companies kind of work like the giant media companies own the smaller media companies, so you have no idea what companies are actually being owned, but at the very top, they're owned by men. Even if women kind of move up to the leadership, I want you to know that it's very hard to redirect a moving train. Like, when you've gotten something in a certain direction, even if you have some women female influence, it's very limited, her capacity to shift things around. And then the other thing is movies. In 100, for example, the top 100 movies are directed by, I think it was 4% were directed by women. So the vast majority of movies are directed, and the leadership of movies are male. So even if you mostly have female viewers, or it seems like a chick flick, it's still men who are proliferating their understandings of sex. So women might be watching scantily clothed women in a chick flick, but men are actually the ones that are saying, this is the value, this is how a woman should look, this is how a woman should act. All that to say, masculine sex is great. For women to understand, this is how a man thinks. This is okay in your marriage. Like, that's part of the thing I teach, is like, great, that's great understanding in your marriage. But for you as a woman and for husbands that are watching, your wife will be fulfilled by sex in a very different way than you are fulfilled by sex.
Mm.
And what I call that is feminine sex. And so to just describe that, Audie, if you don't mind, I'm just continuing to roll with all my.
Please.
If you
I'm going
want
to
to
just take some notes about things I want to comment on, but no, I love what
me.
you're saying.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Okay. Okay. Good. So yeah, the feminine sex, though, for your wife, what's going to actually fulfill her and fill her up is a connecting sex, is a unifying sex, is intimacy that's really focused on slowness and almost meditative, and some traditions that have really done this, I think, well, is like a tantric tradition, tantric sex. And as a Christian woman, a woman of faith that way, I think we can put that in a godly realm, in a godly space that uses some of those skills, but in a meditative, spiritual way that really focuses on the energies between a husband and wife. And a woman, like I coach women one-on-one. So sometimes they'll say things like, we had sex, but it wasn't lovemaking. I didn't feel loved through that. But for a man, that's like really hurtful because he feels loved by that. He feels loved through the act of lovemaking, even if it's like extremely powerful and dominating and, really fierce. Women don't necessarily feel loved by that. In fact, what I generally feel is when a woman is filled up in the feminine sex, then she feels a lot more able to engage in the masculine sex. And then that becomes lovemaking that's really full of both. And truly the same, when he fills up by the masculine fierce sex, he then wants to engage more so in the feminine, slow, passionate, unifying, connecting sex.
This is excellent. I just want to kind of insert here, if I could.
Please.
Literally, I mean, and again, sharing boundaries as far as like being too personal, too, oversharing, but really not have these conversations. And I know just last Thursday or so, I texted her and I said, I want our marriage to be like the top 1%. Where I want you to feel fulfilled in this area as much as I am. I love that you have that kind of love and ability to not desire it in the level that I want to have sex, but I want it to be that you enjoy it as much as I do, because that's important to me. I want to give in that way to you. What would it take for us to be able to have that hem and haw? And I love the way that you term it, masculine sex versus feminine sex, because what we've been calling it is actually Hollywood sex. Like you said, that's what I've been programmed. I mean, when I was a little boy, I was 5 years old, and I was James Bond on my bike, and I was riding through the woods. And that's why I ride my mountain bike now is my one thing in my physical, because it actually taps into so much more being outside and everything like that as far as work-life balance is concerned. So that's my one thing for my personal life that lights me up, and it taps into that whole, here the hero is, the hero man, he's coming to save the world and save the damsel. Kind of like that John Eldridge stuff, the Wild at Heart. And then at 5 also, I saw, I went out with some little boys in our neighborhood, and we were trying to be cool, and this is many years ago. I'm 54, and we went down to what we call the graveyard. It was where all these rocks were broken up, cement, concrete, and it was pushed down the hill, and it was really kind of a scary place, kind of like we would play fort, all this kind of samurai ninja and all that kind of stuff down there. But anyway, we got some beer, and we also got some pornography, really raunchy pornography that had orgies going on. And so that was at 5 years old, and I didn't have a place in my mind to, where to go with that. Like, what is that? It's just like, but it was exciting, but it was like, and I've been kissing little girls at 5 and, kind of that kind of stuff and, exploring and all that, playing doctor and all that. And I'm like, I don't know how to get out of like, what is normal, what is natural, what is good for her and good for me. Like you said, and I love the differentiation of masculine sex versus feminine sex, because then you're not judging either one. You're not calling it Hollywood sex, and it's like, that's just not the way it's ever going to be. It's like, No, I like masculine sex. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? That's a beautiful thing. That's the way God created it. Because I was telling her, I said, Song of Solomon, I know it seems like it's a whole, conversation around how God loves the church and how intimacy and all that. That's a husband and a wife exploring each other's bodies
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
enjoying it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, I want to have Song of Solomon sex. And
Yeah.
I don't even like the term sex because it's been so overused. I like love making.
Yeah.
We're making love and
Yeah.
we're expressing it physically. The
Yeah.
love that we have for each other, we're
Yeah.
committed to each other. And then the other thing I said was, I want to love you like Christ loved the church. And I know I can't
Mm,
do that as a human male. I just can't
mm,
do it. But God
mm,
can help me do that. And that didn't feel good to her at some level, I think, when I said it. And I don't quite understand. I probably need to open that conversation up again. But it's like, no, I'm an imperfect, sinful person. I know I
mhm,
try to be a good person. I try to do, but I mean, if I didn't have Jesus in my life, I would be a holy mess.
mm,
You know what I mean?
yeah. 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 Yeah, it's amazing. And I think a lot of couples really have a lot of disconnect just because they think, he he just wants it this way, and sex becomes a chore and a duty for her, especially she is very aware that he wants it and he's going to be crabby if he doesn't, and these kinds of things, rather than well, I mean, it's just that's the way it is, because he feels loved through sex. That's the thing that I really try to get across to women is he feels loved through sex, the same way a wife feels loved through being held and through a long conversation where the husband asks questions and wants to hear her heart, and like that, like her to her, or maybe him planning a date night that's just full of really thoughtful things. Like to her, that like makes her swoon, but to him, that's lovemaking. That's the physical release and oxytocin that's released in an orgasm, that goes throughout his entire body, where women, we smell a baby's head and we get oxytocin released throughout our whole body. Men, that's not the case. It's orgasm that's like goes all the way through. For a woman, a big, wonderful, non-sexual hug, causes her to feel oxytocin and feel good feelings. And that is investment in her emotional intimacy, which then makes her want to please him in the bedroom and connect with him. So what I try to do is really help women to understand that masculine sex is good sex, is fierce sex, is good to seduce him, to text him sexy things, and to have all the wonderful pleasures and intimacy, and to understand his body and to know how to work it, and to have all the good different lingerie and different ideas and all that stuff. That's all good stuff. So in the wrong context, it's not going to be fulfilling. It's not going to be what it is it's soul crushing, because the enemy says, the Bible says that adultery destroys the soul. And when you look at if you did a concordance of the Bible, of like how many verses that are like, don't adulter, don't have adultery, don't. I mean, it's insane how many verses are that way. And I think in the church, we have just focused on that. Because there's been so many verses on it. But I think the wise wife looks at that and says, wow, sex is that powerful. And God has to tell men over and over and over again, don't have sex with anyone with your wife, because it's that powerful.
It is.
And I think, yeah. And I think women, we mistake and we say like, yeah, you shouldn't be like, don't lust after another woman, and instead we should be like, oh my gosh, like that's insanely powerful. And there's this beautiful verse in Proverbs 5 that says, basically, don't have adultery, like avoid the adulterer, like go away from the prostitute. And then it says this beautiful verse that says, but let your wife's breast satisfy you, and let him be inebriated by your love. And it's just like, let him be inebriated, like literally get drunk off of your love, off of the wife's love. Like that is what God wants. He wants you to indulge in lovemaking in a spouse and husband relationship. He's not saying sex is bad. He's saying in the right context, go crazy. Let it flow in the rest of your lives, and that's what's so beautiful is when you're in the right context, sex can be incredible. And then when a husband is tempted by the myriad of temptations all over the world, much less in his own phone, literally, he can be like immediately thinking about all the incredible experiences he has with the woman who loves him deeply. And it's satisfying rather than, again, shame invoking and negative and hurtful in so many different ways.
That's beautiful. Just as you're saying that, to build on what you're saying, I think about my own experience, of waiting so many years to get married. I just got married at 39. Wow. Lily and I did both first marriages through eHarmony is how we met online. Wow. But, it's that whole thing of shame. Like, I shouldn't want to have sex so much. Why is it that I'm built this way? And it's like, God, can you just take it away? And all these frustrations around it and shame. And, then you look at somebody that's, and I wish they never invented, yoga pants, because it's like, there's not much left for imagination there. And I'm like, okay, then I saw somebody post, a friend's daughter that posted, well, what Jesus said in the Bible is, hey, bro, if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. Well, okay, great. But I can't help that. I try not to look. I bounce my eyes. Hey, pick up a quarter and all that kind of stuff. All that crap. And it's like, and I go to my brothers and I talk to them about it, because I don't go to my wife like that. And I'm like, and a brother told me this. He said, I want, the only person I want to have sex with is you, sweetheart. Because otherwise, if I have sex with someone else, there's either two things that have happened. You've either died, or, I'm having a premarital affair. And neither one of those do I want to do that. And I'm like the same way. And I'm like, but I remember before I was even married, this was back in 1990. I was probably, and this is how serious I was about wanting to have a great marriage. I was reading these books by Bill Gothard. I don't even know who he is, but he's a Christian, kind of almost like a Joel. I would call him as that, but he was a very conservative Christian author and teacher and everything. Okay. And like the woman that I was going, in this house with she and her husband studying it, she would put her head dressing on to cover her hair because of the biblical, that's how conservative it was. But he basically said this spiral that happens in a marriage, that if that man doesn't feel fulfilled in that sexual area, and the woman, whenever he pursues her, she pulls away, and he like feels and retreats, and then she pulls away more, and then he starts looking in other places to get his needs met. And I'm like, oh gosh, I do not want that to happen. And then, there's an affair that's just right there happening. And it's like the man gets the brunt of it and says, hey, what were you doing? Keep your zipper up. What are you doing with this woman? It's not your wife. And it's like, but how do I get this? How do I make this happen between the two of us? Because I don't want her to do it out of obligation. I want her to do it out of freedom and desire. And like you said, everything that you said is just so spot on. I wish the world could hear that, because it's so beautiful. And I'm trying to get it out there to the world.
Yeah, thank you. It's true. It really is. And the marriage is the foundation of families. And when you raise kids and families that are healthy and whole, then you don't have the crime. You don't have kids that are growing up without dads, without role models, because you have connected husbands and wives and they feel whole in themselves. But I do speak to women specifically because I don't think there is enough guidance for women in this area. There's so much shame. Like my book, Delight Your Husband, is all about, and now I am going to be really blunt, oral sex, a woman serving her husband. And it's focused on getting through the taboos, and it's focused on getting through, I call it Penny, because I think an entire new framework needs to be around this beautiful act between a husband and a wife. Because if they don't see it as beautiful and holy and good. It's literally in the Song of Solomon's, like it's right there.
Very clear.
Yeah, exactly. It's been clear to scribes throughout the whole history of Song of Solomon. So it's not new, but in terms of our experience of that, we immediately associate it with sin, and it has been in the past, but in terms of in the context of your marriage, you have that freedom, and that's where the husband feels fulfilled. But I think there's so much non-education in it, because a man he could go to just about anyone, anywhere, and be like, what's going to make my wife happy? And it's pretty darn easy to pick up the clues as long as he's willing to look. But a lot of times, a wife doesn't have that explicit instruction of like, here's how to, get out of that shame. Here's the actual boundaries in the Bible, and here's the freedom that you have. Because a lot of times women feel shameful. They feel ashamed because they think what they're doing is sin, what they're doing is wrong. And it's like, no, that's what the enemy has lied to us about. That's what that's not accurate biblically. There's actually a very short list of what he says is not okay. And essentially, if I can dumb it down, it's essentially outside of marriage, it's not okay. So whether it's fantasy outside of marriage, whether it's just about everything outside of marriage, even to the extent of a lot of people are worried about, is sodomy a sin? And if you actually look at that and you did biblical research on it, that's actually talking about temple prostitutes, male or female. That's not talking about what we understand it as an English word today. So there's just
really between male and male.
Temple prostitutes. So it depends. So the word is in the Bible, aside from King James, every other version, according to my reading and research, every other version is sodomite. And sodomite is a temple prostitute, but the word Sodom comes from, sodomy or sodomite in English comes from the word of the city of Sodom. And Sodom and Gomorrah. And the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah, as far as we understand it, is homosexuality, because they came to sexually assault the male angels. But if you can imagine a city that's going to sexually assault, like it says literally in the Bible, every male in the entire city came to knock on the door to sexually assault these guys. So if the whole city is homosexual, you can't actually have a city, because there would be no children. So I can imagine the city is doing a ton of sin, not just that, if that's what the sin is. But the whole point, I guess I'm trying to make with the specific, like the word sodomite, is that that's temple prostitutes and potentially, homosexuality.
But not just limited to that, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the whole licentious. How do I pronounce that word? Licentiousness?
I think that's right.
I think it's pretty darn close. That's a $5 word right there. But it's the whole thing of just this. It was what I saw when I was 5 years old. It was an orgy with everybody having sex with each other, that it wasn't a marital relationship. That's what you're saying. That's the only thing that's off limits, is what your point is, right?
Right. Exactly. Between the two of you. I mean, that's the freedom. That's getting absolutely lost in intimacy. That's being inebriated. That's washing each other. I mean, it's
beautiful.
That's the indulgence, the freedom that God gives us.
So I just think, because this is how important it was to me. So Lily and I are like, we go really deep in conversations, and we've always done that. And so Lily even set up, and I mentioned to you, she worked with Dr. Henry Cloud, the awesome. Best-selling author. Boundaries is probably one he's best known for, but he's written 13 best-selling books, Integrity, different things like that. But I asked him, she set up a call with me to ask him before we got married. I said, well, what happens if there's not the same level of passion in our marriage, that I'm going to be more passionate, more physical, like you said, masculine sex, then she's going to want to be participating in that. Like, and what limits it? Like I was even in that time thinking about, what is it going to look like in, our intimacy in our bedroom, of like, if she's not interested, and he's like, there's no off limits. As long as the two adults come together and agree in the confines of their marriage, and it's not bringing somebody else in or anything like that. It's just the two becoming one flesh, then everything is fine. Like you said, I mean, it's funny that you resonate, but we always know, and I teach the laws of extraordinary success. I coach and teach that. I'm a certified one thing trainer. And so I teach the laws of the universe around how to get, results. And so whenever you're teaching something, someone else is teaching something and it's all consistent, it's because it's a universal principle that we should follow. Or if we, it's just like gravity. If we don't follow it, we're going to hurt ourselves or, kill ourselves by trying to go against whatever that universal law is. So what you're saying about within the confines of marriage, it's okay. I mean, it works for, a lot of these people out here that I'm mentioning. I mean, this is from a dental work-life balance, but these are folks from around the world too, like Muslims and non-believers, people that don't believe in a God, or, people that are Hindu, or, all over the world that are watching us talk about this. So it's not going to be, this is not just a Christian thing. This is not just a U.S. thing. This is something that spreads throughout whatever faith that is. And that's what I love about the universal things that you're teaching. This is so beautiful. I love it. And it gets me excited about my own marriage to say, hey, Lily, let's watch this together and hear what your thoughts are. How do I do that? Because I know what, again, what you mentioned about oral sex and everything. I love that you had shared that. That's a beautiful thing. It's not dirty. It's not bad. A lot of times Hollywood has made it to be that. But I'm also thinking in terms of, well, what is, what romancing her? What does that look like? Foreplay, I guess is what I'm saying. And that's washing the dishes for her. We've had that conversation. That's creating that intimacy. Like I said, a really intimate conversation. That's for her what the physical act is to me. So it's beautiful how you're laying this out to be able to help the men and the women come together. I went to a Tony Robbins seminar back in 1995, long time ago. It was one of his top, things. So I looked for everything that was out there. This is before I was married. And he talked about, he had the guys, women are from Mars and men are from Venus, John, whatever his name is. What's his name again? You remember? John. Women are from Mars, Venus.
Gray. Mm-hmm.
Gray, yes, exactly. He came in and talked about what a woman wants. And he started getting into all the physical part, which is, like you said, that's not what a woman wants. That's not feminine sex. But it's again from the masculine brain, I guess. And I'm sure his wife helped write that book. And I'm sure that's not all of it. But here we're talking about this, and I'm like, is that really what they want? I'm trying to figure it out. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. But you don't know. A guy doesn't really know that either.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's definitely, I wish I knew or remembered who said this originally, but I love the quote that says something like, beware of bold simplicity. And I think I often get to a place where I'm like, this is absolutely how it is. But I think this is a very key dynamic in relationships that, there are awesome fundamentals about relationships, like the 5 love languages and like, emotional things of, I think the reason, men are from, what is it? Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Why that resonated for so many, millions of people around the world is because there are principles in there that are so true. But I think that there's, as there are, there's just, life is complex, and there are, I think sexual intimacy is such a staple of a healthy marriage that, I encourage at least making love. And I say making love is anything intimate. And at least results in your husband's orgasm. But often, depending on a woman's drive, depending on what she wants, she doesn't always care about having an orgasm each time. But a lot of times, like, the assumption should be that she would want to have an orgasm each time. But anyway, I suggest that at least twice a week, potentially 3 times, if not more, suggesting, that a husband and wife talk about it and have a conversation about it. But for wives, a lot of times, just to be clear, they may never want sex as much as their husbands, and that's okay. Just like their husbands may never want to have a date night with her as much as she wants it with him, and that's okay, and that means the difference, right? But I also think that we can always make it better for each other. We can always make each other care about it more. Like, for example, if the way the wife goes about encouraging a date night is extremely important. So if she says, honey, we haven't had a date night in 2 months, that is not going to make him want to have a date night. But if you're like, honey, I would really love to enjoy a conversation with you. And then that's like, okay. And then just, just leave it at that. There's no controlling, there's no disrespect. And he just knows like, oh, my wife would be happy about this. I want to make her happy. And then he goes for it. So anyway, there's always ways, and he can then enjoy the dinner more with different, for different ways, different things. So that's why, like, in terms of masculine and feminine sex, like, she will feel more connected through feminine sex, as you guys grow that. And there's something that I call connection sessions that I think grows feminine sex in a really wonderful way. I have kind of a very, if you don't mind, I'd love to kind of give a free resource.
Oh, absolutely. Anything you have, I was going to invite you to do that.
Yeah, I mean, and I think this would be really helpful to have some explicit instructions on like a way to help, because generally people are having masculine sex and it's not fulfilling the wife. And it probably isn't as fulfilling for the husband because he wants to fulfill her. He wants to feel that connection with her. Yeah, exactly. So, but it helps the wife get in tune with her own body, get in tune with her own pleasures. It helps her feel more in control in sex, feel like she has more of a voice. But it's an investment in the sexual experience. So the first kind of rule of connection sessions is there's no orgasm for either party. And it's moved out of the sexual experience. So a connection session is only like at the most maybe 5 to 10 minutes. And maybe a couple hours later, you'd actually have sex, and orgasm would be a part of that. But connection sessions are all about giving a woman really the ability to be, like I said, in control. So she's the one guiding and she's the one requesting the connection sessions. And he is being super excited to be a part of this. And she is the one that has total control. She's about total relaxation. She's about total focus on what she's feeling. And so, like I said, I have very explicit instructions. Anyone who is curious about that, they can just go to delightyourmarriage.com/type, TYPE. And there's a bit more clarification on masculine and feminine sex, and they can get that download, which is clear, like I said, on the connection sessions. But I think that just is a really great investment. Not that it's going to replace one of the 2 or 3 making love sessions that you guys have that will include orgasms and those kinds of things. But if you would add a couple of connection sessions, which again, it's very small, but they invest in her enjoyment in sex and her freedom and her confidence in sex and her ability to engage in that feminine sex. And it creates a dynamic that's different that then again invests in the lovemaking experience for both of you.
Wow. That is a beautiful gift. I think there's so many men that I know. I don't know any man that doesn't have a challenge and comes to me and talks about this in all the different groups and things, be it Christian, non-Christian, Hindu, Muslim. I mean, they want to have that type intimacy that you're talking about. And this is such a beautiful gift to people. I love your passion around this. And I was, with Lily and me both being so communicative, we talk about this all the time because it is a desire of mine. And I get that, it's not a desire of hers at the level that it is for me. And I'll say, hey, can we sit and talk? Because I know that what she wants is that intimacy. And then, and I know, are you familiar with StrengthsFinder? Have you heard of?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love it.
So communication is one of her strengths. So like we'll be sitting there and we've had this conversation. So it's not anything that if she hears this, I'm telling behind her back or anything like that.
Okay.
But like she'll be sitting there with her phone up and or on the sofa or something like that. And we'll be connecting, doing a connection session, I guess is what it would be. Just talking and updating. And then she'll look down at her phone and pick it up and see, and then put it back down. And for me, that's just it's just like completely cuts me off and feels like she's really not into that. This is something I'm doing for her and me because I do truly want to connect with her, and I want to tell her something exciting about my day. And then also, but I wouldn't say it's not connection sessions that she controls the whole thing. So I should probably say that. But I'll ask her for my needs, because that was actually my podcast yesterday is about owning your own need. And so I said, hey babe, that doesn't feel too good. Is there a way we can turn your phone over, or just actually let's get rid of it so that you're not
Yeah.
even distracted by thinking that there might be a buzz or something going on? Because for
Yeah.
me, that feels like you're not that important. And I know that's my issue. I'm not saying that's her
Mhm.
issue. That's my issue. But that's the way I deal with that. And hopefully what you've got, the resource that you've got, that's going to even help us be even better. It actually is an answer to prayer. This is such a God thing because
Mm.
Lily and I sent this text to her last Thursday. Like, what is it today?
Wow.
Today's Wednesday. About,
Yeah.
I'm not going to give you all the details, but I want our marriage
Sure.
to be better. I
Yeah.
want to delight in you. I want to, have Song of
Yeah.
Solomon sex and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then we had a breakup, like a
Yeah.
frustration, friction on Saturday that everything didn't
Wow.
get the way it wanted to, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so now here we are Wednesday talking about the thing that I desire and I want in
Yeah.
marriage. So that's so beautiful.
Wow. You know what? And I'm so grateful. And it's just, God knows He's got perfect timing for things.
Yeah.
So that's, I want to be a little more clear because obviously, because I wasn't. I'm dancing around how vague I want to be and how explicit. So I will say, connection sessions are sexual. So
Oh, okay.
sorry for not
That's
being
different.
clear.
It's not talking about your day and my day. Okay. Sorry. I didn't get that. I thought it was like, oh, sweetheart, what did you do today? Okay.
I mean, it is connecting. I mean, I simply sorry. So just to be clear, but that is connecting. It totally is. And it's going to invest in what I happen to call connection sessions, but it is her guiding him inside. So
Okay. That?
that was me ineffectively dancing on that line of how explicit I should share with people who are not on the inside.
Yeah, so if I was telling you, yeah, we go to Starbucks and we'll go to our favorite restaurant, we'll have connection sessions. It's like, I don't think you're getting it, Audie. You are just not getting it. Because I hope you're not doing that. You can get arrested for that.
Oh, so funny.
Well, I love what you teach. And so now, if that's not a hook, everybody, for wanting to go get this download, I don't know what is. Okay? Because we know sex sells. We know why this sells, right? Because it's like, this is what men want over the last however many years. Men have been in control of things. So like you said, this is not. Okay, so good. Thank you. Thank you. Can we just stop the thing? I'm just going to go download this now. I got to go. Let me say this. Let me set up a lot of this. What I've chosen. I love how specificity of what you are doing and fundamentalism and just all this. But, I have a nonprofit. It's called the World Peace Center. So basically, what my purpose, I think I shared with you, is I help you find your passion and your purpose, leading you to ultimate peace, thus co-creating world peace, one individual organization at a time. The reason I say that is, I think God, you can say Allah, you can say God, you can say the universe, whatever. I mean, I would respect your faith. Whoever's watching this, maybe you don't even believe in God. You believe that there is a God, but you don't believe in Him. Where we are is that we all have a purpose in life. We were just wired that way. And there's going to be something, just like what StrengthsFinders points to, is whatever you do, you are passionate about, and you would do without getting paid, and you love, that's what you're meant to do. If you're an accountant and you're supposed to be a pastor of a church or an imam of a mosque or whatever that is, a rabbi of a synagogue, then you're going to be frustrated, your whole life. And I can just see that what you do is you have your passion, you found it, and you're helping serve so many people. It's so beautiful to see this. And all of you out there, and I want to apologize in advance, we have been very kind of open and authentic about what we're talking about here. But I feel like unless you get to that place and have a conversation like this with your spouse and own your own need, you're not going to be able to have that true intimacy with another human being that you are connected to. So I'm just very excited about what you do. As a matter of fact, I did a survey with these dental practitioners that are out there, and they just graduated from school. Let me set this up for you. They might not be married yet, but they could be married. And they've got anywhere from 350 to 800 some thousand, maybe even $1 million worth of debt because of their schooling. they're pressured, they're stressed out that they're having to go to work, and they're trying to figure it out. They've got the clinical, how to do what they need to do in someone's mouth. They don't have management, practice management, which is basically business management, stress management in their lives. Nor do they have that component with their spouse or, someone maybe they're dating or whatever. And these are men and women both, because like I said, 50-50 dental practitioners now anymore that are graduating are men and women doing this. So it's like, how do they figure out this whole relational thing that's so important to them? And I just think what you provide is just awesome. And we're looking at having a mastermind this summer, and I don't know the date just yet. I would love to invite you to be a part of that and figure out if we can figure this out, because I actually say, would you like to have a couples retreat to work on your marriage? Because I do something different with what you do. My wife and I actually do couples retreats together. And I think that is like one of the number one pain points for literally everybody out there is this whole intimacy thing. It's sex. And how do we deal with that? And how does it, not that I'm going to find it somewhere else. I remember if it was Tony Evans, or I don't remember who the biblical teacher it was, but he said, it's not cool to be a man and to see how many men you can seduce. It's being a man and being able to romance your wife and please her for the rest of her life. That's what's being cool as a
man. Yeah, it's so true. Yeah. So agree.
Well, I know we've gone over time, but thank you so much, Bella, for your time. What offer do you have if people are like excited about this, they want to know more, and maybe is it only for women, or do you have anything for men too? Or what can you offer if they want to go further?
Sure. Yeah. So I have my free podcast comes out just about every week. So I'd love, if anyone has the time or inclination to listen to that, it's Delight Your Marriage. But then in terms of working with me one-on-one, I love to coach. I do only coach women, but obviously that's a huge gift to their husbands as well. So, but it really gives a wife not just the opportunity to love her husband well, which is a huge, desire for women, but also how does she receive that love well? So it's my program, The Delighted Wife. And, I love to get on what I call free clarity calls with wives to get a sense of what are the obstacles she's having. And then, what are her dreams for her marriage? And then, I kind of have my discerning hat on, my doctor's hat, and to discern, is one of my programs the right fit for her? Is it going to be the right fit for her? So I love it. It's just incredibly fulfilling work to really get them. It's interesting. You were talking about, people that have so much on their plate, so much stress and all that. I read a study once that said a great sex life is like having $100,000 raise. And
absolutely.
And so I just feel like when you get your relationships right, like everything makes everything so much easier, like everything. And so that's why to me, it's like this, little thing. Sex really at the most takes an hour probably.
Wow. That'd be fun. An hour?
At the most, probably. Okay. But let's say, if it's 3 times a week, whatever, like that is a very small investment in the rest of your life, in the rest of your marriage, your kids, your focus at work, your focus in every area. And that's a wife too. Like she feels filled up and loved when her husband does. Like, so yeah, like I said, the program is The Delighted Wife because she feels filled up. So yeah, I would love to invite anyone on a clarity call. That website I'll just throw out is www.dym.as.me, and they can just sign up for that free, maybe 40-minute call with me, and we can kind of discover obstacles and dreams and see if working with me is the right fit.
So the men that are out there that might be in the same place as I am, obviously Lily's not part of this conversation, but yet I would love for her to have that clarity call with you.
Yeah.
Now, how do you invite your wife without like you said about the date, now the shoe's on the other foot. Hey, I hadn't had a date in 2 or 3 months, honey. How about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
how do you invite someone into that conversation without, because we've had it ad nauseum. I've even said that. I use those words that we've talked about this. In the men's group that I went to last night, the Mark Men group, I'm like, you guys I know are tired of hearing this, but it's like, that's the work that I was doing around, our sex life and intimacy and all that kind of stuff. And how do we make it better and all that with our marriage? So how do you invite a woman into that conversation to not say, I want you to do this, could you do this? What would you do? How would you do that from a woman's perspective?
Yeah. So there's a few things, because I hear from men constantly, like it's just constant. And I've gotten to a spot where like a lot of times it's just really empathetic things that I can respond to. And, I'm praying for you, I'm praying for husbands and their marriages. But I will say, I have several resources to point husbands to. There's a specific podcast called The Three Things He Wants in Sex. It's podcast 199. And what that is to help, I read out some of the emails that husbands have sent to me, because I think women are just unaware that their husband is normal. They think he's a sex addict. They think he's obsessed with sex. They think he's, X, Y, and Z. But when a woman starts to hear all these other voices of other men confirming, and by God's grace, I have that opportunity. Sometimes sorry, I'm being kind of verbose. I have to wrap up soon, but I know you mentioned, but there's a quick page I would encourage them, if, he to just ask her, I watched this thing. It's by a woman who, used to even be abused in her first marriage. And what she says now is that if she had the tools that she knows now, she knows she could have transformed her marriage. Like that's like a easy hook. Like, okay, that's something. And she, has this website that's, delightyourmarriage.com/husbands. And what I have in that website, that web page, is I've got just message after message after message, all these little excerpts of emails of men sharing their heart, of how painful they are, of how on the edge of divorce they are, how lonely they feel, how sad they feel, how they're in tears, sharing about their sex life. Like men, these are not monsters. What they are men who desire to feel loved by their wives. And so there's several resources that I kind of point husbands to. I encourage them to see sex as not just sex for him, but also sex for her. So to understand, maybe you go download that connection session thing, you send it to her and be like, is this true? Would you be interested in this? Like, just ask the question. I would just encourage you, because my program is for wives, it's really about her making herself happy, the delighted wife. Like it's herself that's going to be happier. It's like, yes, he gets to enjoy, but their whole marriage is going to transform. And that's what I love seeing, is like wives in my Facebook group, for example, will say like, my husband started doing things that he's never done before. He started, being interested in the kids, and he started doing construction projects around the house, and he started taking out trash and, all these things. He started complimenting me, and he started, these men that used to be having affairs are suddenly like taking them out dancing, and like God does incredible things through the work. And I think I want to give husbands hope out there, that if you're watching this, there was a reason that you watched it. Don't lose hope that your marriage is going to forever be that way. By God's grace, I get to work with like people who have been married 25 years. Within weeks, things transform. Like, so don't lose hope, and pray for your wife. Pray, what kind of resources she would be open to. And then pray for the right timing, that she feels extremely filled up in your love and the emotional intimacy, so she feels filled up. And maybe even like wait till your birthday or Christmas or Father's Day and be like, honey, all I want for Father's Day is for you to get on a clarity call with Bella. Like that, like those things sometimes really do work.
You have to wait that long?
I know, not necessarily, but depending on. Alrighty. Well, I'm just so grateful, Audie. This is such a special treat for me, just to share and to, by God's grace, hopefully give a lot of people hope and encouragement. I appreciate it.
Beautiful. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I will put some of these things underneath there. If you could kind of keep an eye on that post to make sure I capture them and they have the resources there.
Okay.
But thank you very, very much. And we'll have a more conversation later. This is beautiful.
Oh, wonderful. Again, thank you. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great day.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.